What's up everyone, my name is RoyaleRebelle, and in today's video I'm going over Dead by Daylight's new killer and survivor from the chapter All Things Wicked. This is a full chapter, so we're getting a brand new map along with the new survivor and killer. This is also an original chapter. The chapter is set to release March 12th, and it usually does so around 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Starting off the new map, I just gotta say, I love it. I love the movie theater design. It's such a fun concept. I love seeing the little arcade machines sprinkled all over the map. I think the map is spooky without being too dark. I think you can really tell how far the developer team has progressed because of just how dark most maps are in the game by comparison. I really don't think this map has that issue at all. It's a fun design. It's spooky. I think the team pulled it off really well. They've even got little details and callouts to characters in the game, such as Michaela and Sable. They have their names carved into a statue on the map. There were some issues in the PTB about pallet spawns throughout the map. A lot of players just thought that there were too many of them. In fact, there was one area where there would be a rock, and on either side of the rock was a pallet drop. I don't know if that's intentional. I don't feel like it is. I have a feeling stuff like that will be fixed before All Things Wicked comes to the broader player base, but we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, even with all of these pallets everywhere, it really didn't feel like it was sided with the survivors, but that could just be the way that the unknown moves around the map. The killer for this chapter is called the Unknown. In a broad sense, he feels like Hag. He has a special ability called Hallucination that allows the Unknown to leave copies of himself around the map. At this time, he can have a maximum of 4 hallucinations. The Unknown can use these hallucinations to teleport around the map. Survivors, however, can dispel the hallucinations by interacting with them, but if they fail to do so, this triggers killer instinct for the Unknown. The Unknown's ability makes him a ranged killer. It's called UVX Projectile, and it's a charge attack that hurls projectiles at survivors. It takes 2 hits of UVX to down a survivor. The first hit with a UVX projectile will put the survivor in a weakened state, and then if survivors get hit by it while it's in the air, they get the hindered status for 3 seconds. Survivors can remove the weakened status, however, by staring down the Unknown. The removal of the weakened status is one of the things I don't love about the Unknown's ability, because it's unbalanced towards lower level players. Effectively, the Unknown is going to dominate lower MMR because he's going to get knocks on survivors who haven't developed the skill it takes to chase behind, or to stare behind them while in chase. That is a much more common skill in higher MMR lobbies. The Unknown in lower lobbies is going to get downs, not necessarily because they're good at chase, but because you're going to get survivors running into objects attempting to stare down the Unknown. Because even if you're not in chase and you're trying to stare at him from a distance, it's very difficult to get the line of sight required to, lose that status. I think to be more balanced, it needs to have a natural cooldown when being outside of chase. Keep the stare down mechanic, because I think there's going to be enjoyment, and I think survivors are going to like the challenge of trying to stare him down while being in chase. But for the lower level players, if you're out of chase for more than 10 seconds, I think there needs to be a natural cooldown. That not only do I think is that friendlier to lower level players, it feels like that should be a natural part of the mechanic anyways. The Unknown's 3 perks are Unbounded, Undone, and Unforeseen. So starting off with Unbounded, this gives killers a 5% bonus haste after vaulting a window for 10 seconds if a survivor becomes injured by any means. This perk has a 30-second cooldown. I do appreciate that this perk is chase focused. The meta has really been stuck on gen regression for a while, and I see this as a way to try and introduce alternative playstyles, but like most perks of this chapter, it's not overly powerful. I could see this being a fun bamboozle combo to really get the most out of windows. This could potentially work well with killers like Plague, who don't have to directly harm survivors to injure them. This might be a good counter against plot twists, but I will say there's just nothing game-changing about this perk. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think we're at the point where Dead by Daylight has been around for so long that we're not really going to get anything game-changing. I just think we've seen so much that there's not really anything they can do that will surprise players without being terribly broken. Now, Undone has a lot going on. So when survivors miss a skill check, the Undone gains 3 tokens with a max of 30. Damaging a generator consumes all the tokens, regressing the generator 1% per token, so it's a 30% max regression. It blocks the generator 1 second per token and regresses the generator once it becomes unblocked. 30% in 30 seconds does feel like a lot, assuming the killer stacks their tokens, but at the same time, not many survivors are missing skill checks. If I had to guess for myself, I probably miss a skill check once every 10 matches, and it's usually more to do with perks the killers are running, or to be honest, because I'm live on Twitch and I'm paying more attention to chat than I am my own game. I feel like this perk reads more powerful than what the reality of it is. It might be really good for doctor players. It'll probably pair well with perks like Chlorophobia, Merciless Storm, perks that just make skill checks in general more difficult. Now, of the unknowns perks, Unforeseen is probably going to be my favorite. When the killer damages a generator, they're undetectable for 30 seconds, and then their terror radius is transferred to the damage generator. I think this perk is going to make for some great mind games. It's going to bring more value to like Wiretap and other aura reading perks. There's also just something about killers who run no terror radius builds that are truly terrifying to me. It brings me back to like the old school Dead by Daylight when games were much more like hide and seek based compared to how chase heavy things are now. But those are his perks. And then moving on to Sable. Sable's 3 perks are Invocation, Weaving Spiders, Strength in Shadows, and Wicked. And you'll notice there's a theme with these perks, and it's everything revolves around the basement. Invocation, Weaving Spiders, you can activate an ability that will repair 15% of all generators. At its base, it takes 120 seconds to complete, and it must be like those 120 seconds have to be straight, meaning if you stop the invocation, you have to start completely over. Other survivors can join in and speed this up. It's 100% boost if they're also running Invocation, and it's 50% if they're not. All survivors can see the aura of the survivors doing an Invocation, and then in exchange for the 15% generator progress, the survivor who initiated the Invocation is broken for the rest of the trial, and then only 1 Invocation can be triggered per trial. So honestly, this perk to me isn't worth the payoff. Like, it sounds cool getting all the generators to have some progress. It's a bit of a mind game against killers, but it's really easy to lose 15% progress. I mean, Ruin alone, like, you better hope that the killer's not running Ruin. Then you're left in a no-mither state for the rest of the trial, and there's no additional benefit to that. I would honestly like to see this perk reworked, and I would rework it so that when the invocation is finished, you get like a brand new part effect on 3 random generators. I think this makes the risk of being in the basement for 2 minutes and being broken for the rest of the trial worth it. Otherwise, this perk just reads too much risk for not much reward. And then just for a bit of context, if you think that my suggestion sounds too broken, I'm saying give 11% progress on 3 generators that's permanent instead of 15% generators. Instead of 15% progress on all generators, because generators have 90 charges, so 10 divided by 90 is 11. So, really, the big difference is that you just don't lose value on your perk, but, you know, the exchange is that you're broken for the rest of the trial. I think that's fair. I think that's better. And yeah, like I said, 3 random generators, so like I potentially could also just screw survivors into a 3-gen, depending on if they're committed to that, you know, the gens with those reduced charges. So Strength in Shadows is a healing and an aura reading perk. You can self-heal in basement without a medkit at a 60% rate. This is just under double what self-care is. Self-care is a 35% heal rate. When you finish healing, you get to see the killer's aura for 10 seconds. Now, I don't hate this perk. It just does make me sad again as a survivor that the survivor healing got nerfed into the ground. Of Sable's perks, I think this one is probably going to get players the most value. I don't know if that's necessarily good, because if a killer catches you in the basement before you get the heal off, it doesn't really matter that you have that boost of self-healing because you've just given up a hook state. So I like that the devs have given us a bit of that self-healing back as survivors. It just sucks that you have to be in the basement to get that value. Like, I don't know what's up with the devs trying to push players into the basement. I'm kind of curious to see what the reasoning is behind that, and like what do they have brewing with the basement, if anything at all. Then finally there's Wicked. This perk actually got reworked from the PTB, so currently it has not been publicly play tested before the launch. And how it's set to work when it releases is that it will allow survivors to unhook themselves when they've been hooked in the basement, and then you see the killer's aura for 20 seconds after unhooking. This perk is really just a different flavor of Deliverance. Like, they both allow survivors to unhook themselves. It's just in different circumstances. And like many perks in DBD, this one just feels incredibly situational, but it may be a must for like a basement build, like, because Sample is kind of set up for a basement build. So maybe that's just kind of what it is, because if you're committed to being in the basement, whether that's for heals or whether that's for an invocation, this might be a requirement to get that build to run smoother. I will say, I think if you're going to run Wicked, you should probably also run Off the Record. I just imagine that, like, if you do unhook yourself and you've got like a killer who's doing a wide camp with a basement, they're gonna try to bait out that endurance status effect. So, you know, use Off the Record so that you don't run into the trouble of being like trapped into the basement. But this is everything that's coming to DBD in the All Things Wicked chapter. I'll leave a link to the official chapter page down in my description below. But what do you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more content, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel so I can bring you more Dead by Daylight content. And if you want to check out my Twitch streams, don't forget to follow me there so you can be notified of when I go live.